She boarded as a nobody, just another woman in worn sneakers. But when the airline staff downgraded her, they had no idea they were insulting the co-founder's wife. And a former investigative journalist on a secret mission. What happened next would shake the company to its core. If you were captivated, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow we've got another story that will leave you stunned. The glass doors of JFK International slid open with a hush as Clara Whitmore stepped into the terminal. Her steps were soft, almost hesitant, but her gaze held focus. She moved like someone who had walked through power before and had chosen to step out of its shadow. To any observer, she was just another traveler. Faded jeans, a worn gray sweater, scuffed sneakers. A canvas backpack hung from one shoulder. No jewelry, no makeup, no reason to look twice. And that was the point. But behind a modest disguise stood the co-founder of Skyline Airways, wife of its billionaire CEO, and a former award-winning investigative journalist whose exposés once shook the halls of power. She had walked away from the headlines to raise a family, to support her husband's vision of a human-centered airline. But lately, that vision had begun to rot. The complaints had piled up, passengers mysteriously downgraded, treated coldly, dismissed based on appearance. Clara had read them all, cross-referenced the dates, the names, the patterns. It smelled of something bigger than bad luck or poor service. It smelled like culture. Let it go, Alex had said over dinner. You're seeing ghosts. HR's on it. But HR didn't walk terminals. HR didn't hear the tone behind a forced smile. Clara knew when a truth was hiding in plain sight. She had purchased her ticket in cash, used her maiden name, no frequent flyer number, no digital breadcrumbs. Just Clara Whitmore, an invisible woman with a microphone in her pocket and a mission in her heart. As she stepped into Skyline's signature blue and silver terminal, she passed a well-dressed man being offered champagne. A few feet ahead, an older woman struggled with her carry-on, ignored by staff. Clara stopped to help, lifting the bag with practiced ease. They don't usually see us, the woman said softly. Clara smiled. They will now, she thought. The line for first-class check-in moved steadily beneath the cool glow of LED lighting. Chrome counters, subtle jazz music, and minimalist luxury framed the space with corporate elegance. Everything about the Skyline Airways terminal whispered, "We know who belongs here." Clara Whitmore, in her faded jeans and weathered sweater, remained invisible to the staff behind the counter until she stepped forward. The airline agent looked up with a smile that faltered just slightly when her eyes reached Clara's shoes. "Name?" she asked, already less warm than she'd been with a couple ahead, who had rolled designer luggage and left behind a trail of expensive perfume. "Clara Whitmore," she answered, handing over her ID and a paper ticket. She kept her voice level. Curious, open, almost apologetic. The role required a careful balance, observant, not confrontational. The agent, Melissa, according to her name tag, took the documents with 2 fingers, as if they were slightly damp. Her eyes flicked across Clara's face, down to the fraying strap on her backpack, and then to the screen in front of her. Melissa said, tapping the keyboard. "Flying first class?" Clara nodded. "Yes, it's my first time." Melissa offered a practiced smile that didn't touch her eyes. She turned to her colleague, a woman with a navy blazer and a customer service supervisor pin, and leaned in, whispering just beyond earshot. But Clara didn't need to hear the words. The glance, the half smirk, the unnecessary delay, all spoke louder. Melissa returned with a new smile, slightly stiff. "We're just sorting out a small seating issue, Miss Whitmore. Thank you for your patience." Clara said nothing, but internally she took note. Her recorder was already running. Behind her, a man in a pinstripe suit had dropped his passport. 3 employees scrambled to retrieve it for him. One laughed at his joke as they handed it back. "We've already got your champagne chilled, mister." "Harrington," she said, "the crew is ready to welcome you aboard." Clara's face remained composed. Her fingers rested lightly on the counter. She made herself small, but present, a witness in plain sight. After another pause, the supervisor stepped forward. "I'm Linda. I'm afraid there's been an overbooking in first class. We'll need to reassign you to economy. Clara tilted her head slightly. But I confirmed the ticket last night. Yes, Linda replied, voice polite but cool. It's our policy to prioritize frequent flyers and elite status members in these rare cases. You'll receive a partial refund, of course. She didn't shout. She didn't protest. She simply asked, do you reassign all first-time flyers this way? Linda's expression flickered for a moment. Surprise? Irritation? Then returned to neutral. We follow internal guidelines. Behind them, Melissa whispered to another staff member, no entry for the poor. They should stick to budget airlines. The other woman stifled a laugh. Neither noticed that Clara's recorder had captured it all. She accepted her downgraded ticket with a quiet, thank you, and stepped aside. At the gate, the same pattern unfolded like choreography. Trevor, the young gate agent, greeted sleek suits with wide grins. Women in tailored blouses and glossy shoes received assistance with overhead luggage. Clara, when she approached, was met with a clipped boarding pass. She held it out. You'll need to check that backpack, Trevor said. Why? She asked calmly. It's small. It fits under the seat. We're out of overhead space. But I just saw... It's company policy, he interrupted, already tagging her bag. Behind her, another traveler, a man in a polo shirt, muttered, I've seen 3 bigger bags go through. Trevor's smile tightened. Feel free to contact customer service. Clara stepped aside. She transferred her recording device to her jacket, kept her posture even. She'd learned long ago that dignity is loudest when it's quiet. The walk down the jet bridge was long. First-class seats gleamed with brushed leather and curated welcome kits. Flight attendants offered hot towels with names memorized and smiles rehearsed. Champagne glasses clinked. As Clara passed through, no one made eye contact. Row by row, the illusion unraveled. Economy was colder, not in temperature, but in tone. Fluorescent lights buzzed harder here. Flight attendants moved faster, spoke flatter. Requests were handled quickly, if at all. By the time Clara reached seat 27B, the divide wasn't just visual. It was felt. An older woman greeted her warmly. We meet again, she smiled. The same woman Clara had helped earlier. Clara eased into middle seat, quietly observing as a flight attendant dismissed a passenger's request for water. They don't bother hiding it anymore, the woman whispered. Clara nodded. She had seen enough, but she wasn't finished. The damage wasn't in what was said, it was in what wasn't. And soon it would all come to light. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Clara Whitmore sat in row 27B, her posture straight, her gaze steady. Around her, the noise of modern air travel buzzed on, rustling snack wrappers, murmured conversations, the occasional chime of a call button. The division was sharper up here. From the narrow sliver between seats, Clara could see into first class. Real glasses clinked against china. A stewardess poured wine from a bottle with both hands. Someone laughed too loudly at a joke no one else could hear. In economy, things were quieter, tighter, dimmer. A teenager in the window seat beside Clara gently asked the flight attendant for a blanket. They're reserved for premium passengers, she replied curtly, without looking up. Across the aisle, a man in his 70s requested assistance retrieving heart medication from his checked bag. You should have thought of that before boarding, came the answer. No apology, no empathy, no offer to help. Clara scribbled into a small notebook on her tray table, hidden behind a pretzel packet. Her recorder was on. Her phone vibrated once. A secure message from her contact inside Skyline HQ. Confirmed. Project Appearance Matters is real. Implemented Q3. Tied to employee bonuses. Her hand froze for a moment. The policy wasn't rumor. It was fact. They were paid to treat people differently, to reward those who looked rich and quietly punish those who didn't. This wasn't a training flaw. It was a corporate doctrine. A few rows up, Margaret, the older woman Clara had helped earlier, leaned toward her. They got you too, didn't they? She asked quietly. Clara nodded. I've flown with them for years, Margaret added. But lately, they look at me like I wandered by accident. Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with exhaustion. Clara felt it too. The slow erosion of dignity, not with slurs or shouts, but with shrugs, with policy, with smiles that exclude. And yet, the mission wasn't complete. She needed more. One more careless comment. One more denied request. Something to tie the entire operation together. Then, a shadow. A presence. Clara looked up, standing in the aisle of economy. Somehow unmistakable even in a sea of seats, was Caroline Winters, Skyline's chief of customer experience. Clara's blood chilled. Caroline's hair was perfectly styled, her blazer pristine. She was supposed to be in Europe for a conference. She wasn't just senior management. She was the architect of the very culture Clara was now exposing, and she was staring straight at her. "Stay in your seats," Caroline ordered briskly as passengers began to rise. Security protocol. Whispers broke out across the cabin. Caroline made her way down the aisle like a missile locked on target and stopped directly in front of row 27. "You," she said flatly. "Come with me." Clara looked up, calm but steady. "Is there a problem?" "Identity fraud is a federal offense," Caroline snapped. "You boarded under a false name. Security is waiting on the ground." Clara blinked once. "So that's how you want to play it. I booked under my maiden name, Alexandra Clara Whitmore. That's legally mine." "Don't be cute," Caroline growled. "You misrepresented yourself." Clara rose slowly. The entire cabin was watching now. Smartphones were out. Passengers whispered, filmed, leaned forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I've been recording since I stepped into the terminal this morning," Clara said calmly. "Every comment, every downgrade, every instance of preferential treatment under your appearance matters directive." Caroline's eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no words came. "You've built a culture that rewards bias and punishes dignity," Clara continued, her voice steady but sharp. "Your staff follow your policy. I've documented the bonuses, the memos, the consequences of looking too average." Behind her, Margaret stood up. "So have I," she said, lifting her phone. Another voice joined. Jason, the student beside her, spoke up. "They made my grandmother check medical equipment because she wore a hoodie." A flight attendant stepped forward, visibly shaken. "We were told if we spent too much time with economy passengers, we'd lose performance bonuses. We were ranked by how many premium interactions we logged." Caroline turned. "That's enough?" "No," Clara said, her voice ironclad now. "What's enough is watching people get quietly devalued because they didn't wear the right shoes." She pulled out her press badge, still tucked behind her ID. "My name is Clara Whitmore. I co-founded Skyline with my husband, Alexander. And what I've witnessed here is not the airline we built." A collective gasp swept through the cabin. Someone dropped their phone. The cabin crew froze. Clara turned to face the stunned passengers. "This isn't about special treatment. It's about basic human decency. You paid for respect, and they gave you a hierarchy. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then applause, scattered, then swelling. The camera phones captured all of it. The flight wasn't over, but the story had already taken flight." Clara sat back down. She wasn't done yet, but now she wasn't alone. The plane had landed, but no one moved. Seatbelts remained buckled. Carry-on stayed untouched. A strange stillness held the cabin. Not the usual post-flight impatience, but anticipation. As if the real landing hadn't happened on the tarmac, but right here, between rows of cramped seats and discarded soda cans. Clara Whitmore, still standing near row 27, held the cabin with quiet authority. The kind that didn't demand silence, but earned it. Caroline Winters stood opposite her, perfectly put together and completely unraveling. "You need to come with me immediately," Caroline repeated, her voice sharper now, strained with control. Clara didn't flinch. "Caroline," she said, gently but firmly, "you're not speaking to a road passenger. You're speaking to your co-founder's wife." A ripple passed through the cabin. Sharp breaths, lifted heads, stunned glances. Several passengers gasped audibly. Phones that had already been recording zoomed in closer. I boarded this flight under my maiden name, Clara continued. Legally, discreetly, because I wanted to see firsthand what your guest experience had become. Caroline's mouth opened, then closed. For once, words failed her. Clara's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. I'm not here to humiliate you, she said, her voice low, unwavering. I'm here because the company we built, what Alexander and I once dreamed of, has lost its soul, and your policies have helped it happen. Caroline attempted a tight smile, laced with corporate reflex. We value all our guests, Mrs. Whitmore, but this is an internal matter. No, Clara said, shaking her head. It stopped being internal when your staff told passengers to bring photographs and family credentials just to prove they deserve respect. She turned slowly, facing the entire cabin now. Not a speech, just truth. I watched as elderly passengers were ignored, as medical needs were dismissed, as people in suits were offered champagne, while others were told there was no room. I saw you smile for cameras while writing policies that tie service quality to appearance. Someone in row 25 raised a hand. I fly every month. They downgraded me last week with no explanation. But the woman next to me, same flight, same time, got upgraded just because she looked polished. Another voice joined, Margaret from the aisle. I've flown Skyline since its founding. I used to be greeted by name. Now I get treated like luggage with pulse. A flight attendant, Heather, the same one who had ignored water requests, stepped forward cautiously. I followed protocol, she said quietly. They told us, serve premium passengers first. Focus on visual value. I hated it, but I needed the job. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. Clara nodded once, not with condemnation, but with acknowledgement. I'm not here to blame individuals, she said. I'm here to address a culture that rewards quiet cruelty and calls efficiency. Caroline stepped forward, eyes narrowing. This is not the time or place for this discussion. On the contrary, Clara interrupted, calm but unshakable. There's no better time than when the people who are affected are here, listening. A long silence followed. Then, a voice from first class, older, male, firm. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, I'm George Adler, former VP of Aviation Ethics at Concord Partners. I'd be proud to testify that I witnessed this firsthand. Clara offered a grateful nod. I won't be filing lawsuits, she said, but I will be filing a report to the board, to the press, and most importantly, to my husband. Gasps turned into murmurs. Alexander Whitmore, Skyline's founder, the man who had once promised dignity at 35,000 feet. Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen glowed with hours of time-stamped audio and video. I came here not to accuse, but to document. And now that I have what I need, I hope those still inside this company will have the courage to fix what's been broken. She looked at Caroline. You don't need to be fired. You need to be held accountable. You don't need punishment. You need a second chance to lead better than this. Caroline looked stunned, not by the threat, but by the mercy. Clara turned to the cabin crew. To those of you who've been complicit because you were told to be, I understand. I've been in jobs where doing the right thing felt like a risk. But this is your chance to help make it right. No clapping. Not yet, but something bigger was happening. The power had shifted. Not violently, not loudly, but irrevocably. Passengers stood slowly. Some reached out to shake Clara's hand. Others murmured thank yous. A few were crying. As people began deplaning, Margaret placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. You could have exposed them with a headline, she said, but you did it with grace. Clara smiled softly. Dignity, she said. It starts with how we treat each other, even when we're telling the truth. 3 weeks later, Clara Whitmore stood beside her husband in the central atrium of Skyline Airways headquarters. Behind them, the company's original mission statement, long relegated to a dusty wall, was now etched in glass. dignity in every seat. The room was full: executives, flight crew, longtime passengers, and skeptical former critics. But the energy had shifted, not because of PR spin or clever marketing, because people had started listening. Alexander stepped forward to speak first, his voice steady. When we founded Skyline, we wanted to build more than an airline. We wanted to build trust at 30,000 feet and on the ground. He glanced toward Clara, and somehow we lost that, not in one big moment, but through 100 quiet compromises. I take responsibility for that, and I thank my wife for being brave enough to help me see what I no longer could. Clara didn't step to the microphone. She never liked stages. Instead, she spoke from where she stood, her voice clear and calm. "This isn't about villains or heroes," she said. "It's about awareness, about realizing how easy it is to confuse polish or worth, and how damaging that confusion becomes when it's policy." She gestured toward Margaret, now chair of Skyline's Passenger Dignity Committee, and Jennifer, the flight attendant who had spoken up mid-flight. "These women," Clara continued, "along with every employee who chose to speak out, remind us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it records. Sometimes it simply says, 'That's not right.'" The reforms had already begun. The Project Appearance Matters directive had been formally dismantled. Bonus structures were rewritten. Training programs overhauled. More importantly, the culture was shifting from compliance to conscience. At the gate that afternoon, Clara watched the flight attendant kneel to tie the shoelace of an elderly man. No camera caught it. No supervisor prompted it. It wasn't policy. It was humanity. Later, walking through the terminal hand in hand with Alexander, she paused by a large screen displaying customer feedback in real time. "Still think I was overreacting?" she teased softly. Alexander squeezed her hand. "I think you saved us both." As they disappeared into the crowd, no one turned their heads. No fanfare, no spotlight, and Clara preferred it that way, because the victory wasn't in being seen. It was in helping others feel seen again. If the story moved you, don't let it end here. Stories like this, the emotional stories, the quiet yet powerful justice stories, remind us how easy it is to judge and how vital it is to speak up in a world shaped by appearances. Choosing dignity is revolutionary. Share this moment. Let it ripple outward as one of many narrated stories in the growing waves of justice. Because somewhere out there, another soul is facing their own unraveled fate, and your voice might be the one that helps them rise.